Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming you guys. Welcome to Tung. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. On Sundays, we do meditation together, and then afterwards, I share a talk from this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Every Sunday, I go chapter by chapter by chapter, and this is actually the last class of a 7-month program where I'm going to be restarting this program on Sunday next week on the 9th of August, where I gradually walk students through. And today's class is about the 5 hindrances. All throughout the last 7 months, I've been helping people to understand the path to enlightenment and how to train the mind to get to this enlightened mental state. And now the topic tonight is to understand the hindrances or the obstructions of what's going to block you from being able to get to enlightenment. So if you guys would like to join for meditation, and then afterwards I'm going to share a talk on this topic to help students to be able to understand this. The way that we start with meditation is I start with some chanting to be able to ease the mind into meditation. You guys are welcome to chant along if you like. There's chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. For those of you guys that are online, the chanting sheets are on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books, and then if you go about 2/3 of the way down the page, you'll see the chanting sheets there. It's important to keep in mind that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. Everything that the Buddha taught is to be able to train the mind. He used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. This is how they remembered the teachings. So this isn't a ritual or a prayer or anything like that. Today, we use it as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to come in with some guidance after the chanting to help you understand how to meditate while we're actually meditating. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness while we're just meditating together. Then there'll be a time where we come out of the meditation where I'll be chanting, and that'll bring us out of the meditation. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you to understand the 5 hindrances. So take whatever position is comfortable for you, and you're welcome to join in on the chanting, and then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Namang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. Nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาตัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good evening to all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. I'm going to share with you guys the 5 hindrances to enlightenment. Over the last 7 months here in this particular program, I've been helping students to understand the path to enlightenment, helping them to understand what it takes to be able to move their mind to enlightenment. And now at this very last class, I'm going to help students to be able to understand what's going to block them or obstruct them from being able to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is experiencing no discontent feelings. You're not experiencing any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. You can train your mind to not experience that any longer. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing them to experience these certain feelings. You might think it's your mom and dad or your brothers and sisters or your boss or some friend or colleague that is producing these feelings in your mind. But it's actually your own mind that's causing these feelings. This is what the Buddha figured out as part of his journey to enlightenment. He got to enlightenment at the age of 35, and he taught for 45 years into the age of 80, helping countless people to be able to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind doesn't experience those feelings any longer. You've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing it. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll notice your mind's focused. You'll have concentration, clarity, and deep memory because the mind's going to be performing optimally. There's certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered that need to be uprooted and eliminated out of the mind. And when you do that, that's where you'll experience more and more of the qualities of enlightenment shining through. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming because in the unenlightened state, you'll have a certain amount of bitterness, harshness, and hostility in the mind, and you'll tend to be bitter and harsh to other people. And then all of that just comes back to you in your relationships as you're being unkind and unfriendly and disrespectful, you'll notice that that all comes back to you in those relationships. But if you can clean up your mind and you can train your mind to be peaceful and joyful, and you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile anymore, you'll see that your relationships really improve. You can get to a point where they're really blossoming and they're at ease. You have harmonious relationships with everyone around you. You'll get to the point where you don't even experience a bad mood any longer. So there's various teachings that you need to learn and understand in order to be able to make your way to this enlightened mental state. And one of the teachings that the Buddha taught is the five hindrances, because he taught how to get to this mental state, but then he also taught what's going to block you or obstruct you. And that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. If you guys would like to ask questions, because I'm going to be pausing a few times as we go, you're welcome to ask questions. Here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl there. We also have some up here as well. If you could get a microphone, that'll be helpful so that people online can hear you. All you need to do is press the gray button. You see the lights come on and you can hold this up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question and you can just share it with them. And then if you could turn it off when you're not using it, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And for all of you guys that are online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. The way that I share the teachings of the Buddha is I use his original teachings, his original words, and that's how I teach people the path to enlightenment. I know that might sound kind of obvious to most people, like what else would you do if you're going to share the teachings of the Buddha? Wouldn't you use the original words of the Buddha? It's very rare for people to actually teach based in the original words of the Buddha. There's about 500 million people in the world that consider themselves to be Buddhist, but very few of them actually use the original words of the Buddha. This is why you see so many misunderstandings in the world. You see rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. You see prayer. You see people believing a bunch of things. None of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You're learning, examining, investigating his teachings intellectually to understand them. Then you're reflecting on his teachings to verify if they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and making decisions through those teachings. And that's where things really improve for you, that you start seeing the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. So I'm going to share with you guys here where the Buddha talks about the five hindrances. This is just one place of many where he actually talks about the five hindrances. He says, monks, there are these five hindrances. What five? The hindrance of sensual desire, the hindrance of ill will, the hindrance of complacency, the hindrance of restlessness and worry, the hindrance of doubt. These are the five hindrances. This noble eightfold path is to be developed for direct knowledge or experience of these five hindrances, for the full understanding of them, their complete destruction, for their abandoning. So what the Buddha is pointing to here is the Eightfold Path. This is a core central teaching of his. This is the path to enlightenment. This is what I've been teaching as part of this program. At the very beginning, I taught the Eightfold Path because you need to know this in order to be able to get to enlightenment. The Eightfold Path is the solution for all the pollutions that are in the mind and uprooting those and getting those out of the mind. So here, he's pointing to the Eightfold Path because it's kind of like painting with a broad brush, that you're using the Eightfold Path as a general training to train the mind fully. But then there's other parts of his teachings when he talks about the five hindrances, he talks about the 7 factors of enlightenment as being the solution to eliminate the 5 hindrances. So since I've already taught the Eightfold Path and students are aware of that, have been studying with me, tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the 7 factors of enlightenment first, and then I'm going to share with you how they eliminate the 5 hindrances. As I do, let me just share with you kind of from a high level what these 5 hindrances are. They're similar to what's called the 10 fetters. The 10 fetters are the deepest level of detail that the Buddha shares about what's going on in the unenlightened mind and why you experience what you experience on a day-to-day basis. He calls them fetters because during his lifetime, if you were someone that they were trying to keep confined to a certain area, they would put a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and they would keep you in a field. That's what a fetter is. It's the shackle and the chain and the ball. So this is like maybe like a prisoner, where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would just put a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and then they would keep you in this field. So when the Buddha discovered these pollutions in the mind, he calls them a fetter. And there's 10 different fetters. What you'll see from the 5 hindrances, if you're familiar with the 10 fetters, is there's some similarities, there's some commonalities between them, there's some overlap between them. This is a common way that the Buddha teaches, that there's certain overlap between his teachings. You might see that if you understand the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, there's kind of like this interconnectivity between all of these teachings. They're kind of like overlaying each other. And it's the same thing here with the 5 hindrances and the 10 fetters. So if you ever notice that you're having difficulties or struggles on your journey to enlightenment, it's wise to look at the 5 hindrances to be able to see what is it that's obstructing you from being able to get to enlightenment. That's where it's helpful for you to understand these, because if you're training your mind and making your way to enlightenment, there's going to be times where you're feeling like, gosh, I'm just not making any progress here. Because what the teachings of the Buddha are, is it's doing this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development to become a better and better person. It's not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's learning, growing, and developing in this life to be able to train your mind and get to a wonderful life in this life where your mind is performing optimally. So you can see the results of your training in this life as you're making your way closer and closer to enlightenment. So if you're noticing that you're being obstructed or hindered, or you're having difficulties making progress in life, this is where the 5 hindrances come in, and they're able to help you to be able to see how to move forward. In order to understand how to eliminate the 5 hindrances, you need to understand the 7 factors of enlightenment. So I'm going to teach you guys this first. Based on the name of the 7 factors of enlightenment, sometimes people think this is to determine if you are enlightened or you aren't enlightened, but that's not actually the case. This is a tool to fine-tune the mind. The Eightfold Path, like I mentioned, is kind of like painting with a broad brush. Or another way to think about it is if you had a piece of wood and you were creating a sculpture, you might use a hatchet or an axe to chop off big chunks of wood at the very beginning of making the sculpture. So the Eightfold Path is that. It's chucking off some big chunks of wood. But then if you were going to make this sculpture and you were going to go in and put some wrinkles around the eyes and some eyelashes, you'd probably use like a really fine tool, like maybe a razor blade or something like that. That's what this is. This is a fine tool to really fine tune the mind. It starts with mindfulness. Mindfulness is awareness of mind. In the unenlightened state, people tend to lack mindfulness, where we don't necessarily know about the thoughts, the ideas, and the feelings that are in your own mind. That meditation that we just did, it's called breathing mindfulness meditation. It's helping you to develop awareness of your mind. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. It's to be able to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. So when your mind was on the breath and it moved off the breath and you noticed that, that's your mindfulness. That's your awareness of mind. So you're exercising the mind. Sometimes people use this word in a way that the Buddha didn't use it because it's made its way into modern language, where people say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? What they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? They're just replacing the word careful with mindful. And that's not the way the Buddha used this word. And if those people use it that way, that's fine. That's up to them. But it's important, if you're interested in experiencing enlightenment, that you get closer and closer to what the Buddha taught, because that's what's going to bring your mind to the same understanding that he had. He described it as awareness of mind, that you develop this awareness of your mind. Your mindfulness is kind of like a guard. He describes it this way, and you'll notice this too, that it's guarding your mind. It's like watching over your mind, because anytime you have any discontentedness, or anytime your mind's in any certain condition, you can actually notice that with your mindfulness. It's almost like a virus scanner on a computer. It's watching over your hard drive. And if at any point you notice that there's some virus on your hard drive, your virus scanner will quarantine it, it will clean it up and get it off. This is the same thing that your mindfulness does. It watches over your mind, and if the mind notices anything about your mind that is not helpful, you can actually train it otherwise. So that's where the rest of these factors come in. So if you're watching over your mind with your mindfulness, and you notice that you have a sluggish, dull, and lethargic mind, you can actually practice investigation, energy, and joy to lift the mind up and bring it out of that sluggish state. Because when the mind is complacent and sluggish, it's dull. It doesn't want to do anything. You can understand complacency, like maybe like you don't want to go to work, or you don't want to take a shower, or you don't want to meditate, or you don't want to read a book. That's complacency, and that's going to keep your mind in that dull and lethargic state. When your mind is dull and sluggish and lethargic, the last thing you're interested in doing is reading some books or investigating the teachings of the Buddha, but that's what's going to bring your mind out of that. Because if you actually investigate the teachings of the Buddha, what you're going to notice is that you're actually learning the very things that you need in order to be able to train your mind and get to this better place where you bring your mind to the middle. And when you're starting to investigate the teachings of the Buddha and you're starting to find the answers to the very questions and the very problems that you've been having, it springs up this energy in the mind where you start having more enthusiasm, more ambition, more vigor, more motivation. And then this is where the joy starts coming into the mind, this unconditioned gladness. And it brings the mind out of that sluggish state into the middle. But then sometimes your mind can be in this overactive state where you have this anxiety and this restlessness. And when you notice that with your mindfulness, you can bring in the tranquility, the concentration, and the equanimity. And that's what's going to bring your mind to the middle. So you're going to need to apply the effort to do this. There's no magic button to press in order to bring in the tranquility, the concentration, and the equanimity, but you can train your mind to be able to do this where you apply the effort to bring in this calmness and composure of the mind, this focus and concentration. So this is the 7 factors of enlightenment. You've got one factor that is watching over the mind. That's something that needs to be trained so you can watch over your mind. That's the mindfulness. And whenever you see your mind's in this sluggish or dull state, you lift it up with investigation, energy, and joy, and that brings it to the middle. But when you see your mind's overactive and anxious, you calm it down with tranquility, with concentration, and with equanimity, and that's going to bring it to the middle. So I'm going to pause here and see if you have any questions on the 7 factors of enlightenment before I go further, because next what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the 5 hindrances, and these are the solutions to actually solve it. So do you guys have any questions on this here? No questions? Okay, I don't see any questions online either. Okay, so the first hindrance that's going to hinder somebody from getting to enlightenment is called sensual desire. If you've been studying the teachings of the Buddha at all, you might have heard craving, desire, attachment being used, where the mind has certain wants and expectations. This comes back to what's called sensual desire. Inside the mind, there's this sensual desire, where the mind is longing, yearning through the sense spaces. The sense spaces are your eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. You know, nobody gave you an instruction manual to this being who you are. Pretty much everything nowadays have an instruction manual, but nobody's giving you an instruction manual of how this being functions. The Buddha is helping you to be able to see how this being functions. And the way that this being functions in the unenlightened state is you have sensual desire where you're longing, yearning through your senses, wanting agreeable contact. And if you have agreeable contact through your senses, you'll get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. But if you have disagreeable contact through your sense bases, you'll experience painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So for example, let's just say that you're in a car and you're at a stoplight and someone pulls up to you with music that you find particularly enjoyable and you listen to this kind of music. You might be like, yeah, all right, that's my jam. Let's party. You're having a good time when you hear that sound through your ear because it's agreeable to you and you get so excited and so happy. Yeah, all right, let's dance, party, 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 right? This is agreeable to you. So you're getting pleasant feelings because of your sensual desire. Your mind is agreeing with this sound. But now you pull up to the next traffic light and somebody else pulls up to you with a different type of music. And you don't listen to this kind of music. You find this music to be disagreeable to you. This is where your mind's going to get painful feelings, the anger, the frustration, the agitation, or annoyance because of the mind's sensual desire. The mind in the unenlightened state with its lack of wisdom firmly believes that it's the other person that's causing you to be angry. But it's actually your own mind that's causing this, because the mind's craving permanently agreeable contact, where you can't have permanently agreeable contact because you live in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing in this world, but the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. It wants this permanently agreeable contact. Here's another example. Let's just say you're walking down the street and you walk past a flower shop and you smell flowers coming out of the flower shop. You might be like, oh my gosh, that is the best odor ever. Oh my gosh, that is so great. And you're just, oh, I could stand here all day and smell that. But then you walk a few more steps and you get a whiff of the sewer. You might be repulsed by that. You might be like, that's horrible, right? The mind might be angry or frustrated or irritated. All this is an impermanent situation, but the mind is craving permanently agreeable contact through the nose. And you can only be happy when you get what you want, what is agreeable to you. So the mind is having this agreeable and disagreeable contact, or favoring and opposing. So the thing that's going to hinder someone from getting to enlightenment with sensual desire is they're going to be unwilling to let go of their sensual desires. So for example, let's just say you go to a restaurant and you go there every week on Friday. And this is kind of like a thing that you normally do. And let's just say that there's a certain piece of chocolate cake that you always eat when you go to this restaurant. And you just get so excited. You just can't even wait. Even on Wednesday and Thursday, you're building up the excitement to be able to go to this restaurant and eat this piece of chocolate cake. And now when you go there, you're so excited when they have your chocolate cake. But one day you actually show up and they don't have your chocolate cake, because your chocolate cake is not permanent. And now you show up and they don't have your chocolate cake and you're angry or frustrated. This is because of the sensual desire. What you would be wise to do in that situation is go 3 months, 6 months, a year without eating that chocolate cake, training your mind to let it go, to understand that it's not permanent, that you can go to the restaurant and you can have a meal with chocolate cake and that's just fine. Your mind's pleased. But you can also go to this restaurant and not have the chocolate cake, and you can also be pleased there too. But if you can only be happy if they have your chocolate cake, your mind's bound up. You're having sensual desire. And if you're unwilling to let go of that chocolate cake, for example, I know this is kind of a little bit of a silly example. It's just chocolate cake, right? But if your mind's unwilling to let that go and go 3 months, 6 months, a year without having this chocolate cake, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. Because getting rid of sensual desire, I think of it like getting out of the mafia. If you've ever joined a mafia, I've never joined a mafia before, but maybe you have, I don't know. But if you've ever joined the mafia, one of the things that I understand is when you join the mafia, there's probably a lot of pleasant feelings, right? It's like you got all these new friends, you got new ways to make money, you've got protection, right? You're in this mafia. It's like, wow, this is great. I got all these friends, all these ways to make money and all this protection. But then when you try to get out of the mafia, from what I understand, it's very painful, right? You're not going to just walk your way out of the mafia, right? It's going to be very painful to walk away from that. It's the same thing with your sensual desire. Your mind has gotten so much pleasant feelings from this chocolate cake that when you try to walk away from it, it's going to be very painful. And there's more than just this type of sensual desire. You'll have sensual desire. Maybe there's a certain glass of wine that you drink every single day, right? Once a day in the evening when you get home from work, you drink that glass of wine and you're unwilling to set it aside and not drink it. That the mind is hooked to it and you can only be happy if you get that wine. So the mind in the unenlightened state with its sensual desire, it has all these conditions that if my mom and dad do this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my children do this, if my boss does this, if the weather is this, if I have this much money in my bank account, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, then I'll be happy. So your mind, because of its sensual desire, the happiness is shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's what's going to hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment is this sensual desire. Because what the Buddha is teaching you to do is not to have conditional happiness where you can only be happy if these conditions are met. He's teaching you how to get to unconditional happiness, where you can just be happy regardless. If it's sunny outside or it's raining outside, you can still be happy. If your bank account balance is here or it's here, you can still be happy, that your feelings and emotions aren't based on external circumstances. Because if you base your inner feelings on external circumstances, that means you can only be happy when you get things your way. And when things change, you can't be happy. But the thing is that you live in a world full of change. Things are constantly changing. So the way you get rid of this central desire, because what the mind's doing here is it's holding on and it's craving permanence. What you need to do is eliminate craving, desire, attachment. This breathing mindfulness meditation that we just did in generosity is targeting this. Because the breathing mindfulness meditation, the goal of this isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to notice them sooner and sooner and let them go easier and easier. So when your mind moved off the breath and you had to let go, that's actually really good for your mind, because maybe 10, 15, 30 different times during your meditation, you had to let go, let go, let go, let go. This is really good for your mind, because if you remember when you broke up with that boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys first got together, you were really happy and really excited, but then your relationship deteriorated. And then when you guys broke up, you were angry or frustrated, or you were lonely or bored, or you were missing that person. But at some point, your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came in, right? You were like, if he wants to be with someone else, so be it. Or if she wants to live in a different part of the world, so be it. And your mind let go. But the mind doesn't know how to let go in the unenlightened state. So the Buddha is providing you these tools and techniques of how to train the mind to let go. So meditation is like exercising the mind, training it to let go. So is the generosity. When you're giving and sharing and you're living open-handedly, being joyful and sharing with others, this is training your mind to let go. Because in the unenlightened state, you'll tend to hold on to things, being somewhat selfish, unwilling to share. My money, my food, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, mine, my jewelry, my clothes, my phone, my car, mine, right? So you need to be able to train your mind to let go. And that's what generosity does, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. So these two are actually targeting your craving, desire, attachment, but then you're also going to need to watch over the mind with your mindfulness. The Buddha calls this guarding the doorways of discontentedness. Your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind are the doorways that you're going to experience contact, and then you're going to see that as either agreeable or disagreeable. And you're going to need to be able to train your mind to be able to spot that. So that's what guarding your doorways are, is you're watching over your mind, that as you experience contact through these doorways, that you're paying attention to what's going on in your mind. Because the Buddha gives you in the Eightfold Path how to actually train your mind when you're experiencing discontentedness. So again, with the central desire, if you're getting what you want, you're going to get happy and excited. You're going to get pleasant feelings. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. And one of the things that can happen is this ill will can arise. When you're experiencing the painful feelings of anger and frustration, that's where the bitterness and the harshness and the hostility comes out. That's where you might have pushed away friends or family out of your life. This is called aversion, where you think that it's this person that is causing your anger, and you push that person out of your life. But that didn't solve your problem. You can see it didn't solve your problem because you still get angry, you still get frustrated. If this person was the true cause of your problem, when you push them out of your life, you would be peaceful and joyful from that point forward. So that doesn't work to be able to solve your anger and frustration. Then the other thing that people will do when this anger is arising and they don't understand that it's coming from their own mind, their central desire, they will tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, or your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear it into doing things your way. Or the third thing you might do is you might put your expectations on people and try to pressure them to do things a certain way. And people might be doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter and harsh and hostile to you, or they're putting expectations on you. So this ill will is going to stand in your way of having harmonious relationships with the people around you. Oftentimes that ill will might even be directed to yourself. Sometimes people have negative self-talk in their mind, like an inner dialogue where you're degrading and diminishing yourself. You might actually be directing that ill will towards yourself because your central desire isn't getting fulfilled and you're thinking that it's you. You're thinking like, I didn't get that degree that I wanted, or I didn't get that job that I wanted. Oh, you're so stupid. Why didn't you do that better? You might beat yourself up, directing this ill will towards yourself. So there's a solution for that. It's called loving kindness meditation. This is a different type of meditation than what we did today. I just did it actually at 6:30 with the group that was here at 6:30. We did this loving kindness meditation where you're rewiring your mind to be loving and kind. It's like filling up the gas tank. But then you're going to need to go out into the world and be loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's not just meditation. You can't actually meditate your way to a better mind. You're going to need meditation, but there's other things you need besides meditation too. So this loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in daily life is what's going to transform that. Then there's something called complacency. Complacency is where you have this dull, lethargic state where you don't have this motivation and encouragement. And oftentimes the mind, you're either chasing with central desire, where you're chasing, or you'll swing all the way to the other side where you're dull and lethargic and complacent. And either of these two sides, you can't experience peace and joy. So that's why the Buddha taught you to be able to train your mind to come to the middle, if that's what you would like to experience, where your mind's always peaceful and always joyful. So this dull, lethargic, lack of motivation. In the old translations, if you look at the old translations of the Buddha's teachings, it's called sloth and torpor. But a better way to think about this is complacency, where the mind is dull and lethargic. The way that you can come out of that is through investigation of the teachings. By investigating the teachings, it lifts the mind out of that. This is the factors of enlightenment that I just shared with you, that you can investigate the teachings. And as you do, you'll find the answers to the problems that you're looking at. You'll see this energy will spring up in the mind, and then there'll be this joy, this unconditioned joy. We can understand complacency through not meditating, not reading books, not coming to the temple, things like that, not learning the teachings of the Buddha. You can understand that as complacency. But when the Buddha taught complacency, he taught it as all the way to the level if an unwholesome thought comes into your mind and you do nothing about it, this is complacency. So for example, if you're walking down the street and you're noticing you're judging somebody else and you're looking down on them and you're maybe thinking that you're better than them, look at their shoes, look at their hair, look at the way they talk. Oh my gosh, look at their skin color. They're so white or they're so dark or they're so whatever, right? You're just kind of judging this other person and looking down on them. The Buddha teaches that if you do nothing about that unwholesome thought, then your mind's complacent. Or if you have anger that comes up in your mind and you do nothing about it, your mind's complacent. So you need to actually practice to a level that you apply effort to be able to cut that off, and you don't allow that to be able to stay in the mind. Because as long as you allow that unwholesome thought in the mind, your mind's going to continue to stay wired that way. So you'd like to uproot that by observing your mind, and where you see the mind's complacent, apply effort to cut that off. So any questions here on any of these three that you guys would like to ask? No questions? Okay, I don't see any online either. Okay, so now the last two. There's restlessness and worry, and then there's doubt. What restlessness and worry is that the mind can be confused, distracted, this restless state of mind. It can be kind of overactive, and there can be this worry in the mind where you're worried about your own unskillful conduct. Because you're not going to be able to go out into the world, learn the teachings of the Buddha, go out into the world and just instantly implement them and do things perfectly. You're going to have plenty of missteps in your journey to enlightenment. Plenty of missteps, right? So each time you have a misstep, if you worry about this unskillful conduct, your mind's not going to be able to experience enlightenment. It's a hindrance, just like the other three. This is a hindrance. So what you would like to do to solve this is to use the tranquility, the concentration, and equanimity to bring the mind out of that restless, overactive state and bring it into the middle. That's what we were talking about earlier. Then there's something called doubt. This will keep the mind in the unenlightened state too. It's a hindrance. It's an obstruction. What doubt is where you have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha and the ability of them to actually attain enlightenment. Plenty of people have doubt when they first come to the path, because the opposite of doubt is confidence. How could you have confidence in something if you don't even know what it is, right? So when you first come to the path to enlightenment, how would you ever have confidence in the teachings of the Buddha? But the way you eliminate your doubt is not through blind belief or faith or anything like that. The way you eliminate doubt is through investigation of the teachings. By investigating and examining the teachings, if you start reflecting on them, you'll be able to see that they're true. And then when you practice them and integrate them into your life, and you actually apply them in your day-to-day life, you'll see the condition of your mind in your life improving. Your relationships will improve. There's certain situations where you get angry, and you'll be in that same situation and you won't be angry anymore. That the mind has eliminated that, and you'll know it's these teachings that are doing that. So slowly but surely, you'll gain confidence. You'll have confidence in the Buddha, that you'll know that this person actually lived because you can see his teachings are actually working to help you. You'll know that these teachings are working. You'll know that this community, that if you're a part of a community, you'll know that that community is helping you and supporting you. You'll have confidence in your teacher because they would have guided you to this improvement of the mind. And you'll have confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment because you see that you're actually doing it. You're making your way to enlightenment. So oftentimes people have doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, the community, their teacher, or their own ability to get to enlightenment. So you're going to need to arise this confidence in the mind. So the way that I encourage people to do this is if you have doubt in your mind about these teachings, just admit it to yourself that you have doubt.
I didn't get that.
Whoa.
Did you try again?
Okay. I guess you're listening to my talk. So if you have doubts in your mind, I just suggest that you admit it to yourself, right? Just say, okay, you have doubt in your mind, and now harness it. You can actually turn that doubt into an inquisitive mind where now you say, okay, I don't know if this isn't me speaking. I'm speaking as if I'm you. I don't know if these teachings lead to enlightenment or not. But you know what? I'm going to find out. Let me roll up my sleeves. Let me sink in my teeth and let me figure out if these teachings actually lead to enlightenment. So now you harness that doubt. And now you actually sink your teeth in to examine and investigate the teachings. And that's how you actually build confidence. Because as you investigate the teachings, you'll see how true they are and they actually work. And then you'll get to a point where you don't have doubts anymore. So any questions on any of these? Looks like we have one here. For those of you guys online, you can put your question into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
How would you actually bring about tranquility, concentration, and equanimity?
So once you understand what this is, you need to apply the effort internally within your mind to be able to calm it down. So if you've ever gotten to a point where your mind has been overactive and you're like, you just kind of calm it down. There's no magic potion. There's no button to press. Just internally in your mind, you need to know what these things are. And now if you've been training your mind with meditation and you've been able to apply right effort, which is part of the Eightfold Path, you'll be able to internally bring in the tranquility, the concentration, and equanimity. Okay. So there's one last hindrance that the Buddha doesn't make it as part of the Five Hindrances because he talks about it so much in other parts of his teachings. He doesn't call it out here, and I'll just share this one with you. This is the hindrance of all hindrances. It's oftentimes translated to ignorance, but a better way to talk about it is the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding that the mind has. For example, the mind lacked wisdom about sensual desire. The mind will firmly believe in the unenlightened state that it's other people who are causing you to be angry and frustrated. It'll firmly believe that, and it'll just keep thinking that, and it won't be willing to look at the truth, to be able to see the truth for itself. So this lack of wisdom hinders the mind from being able to see true reality and then be able to implement the solutions to actually fix it. So that's why everything on the path to enlightenment is about cultivating wisdom, that you're not believing teachings. That's why you're learning, reflecting, and practicing. So you can get to the truth and you can see the truth for yourself. This is what you would like to be able to do. So you're transforming this wisdom, you're transforming this ignorance into wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing and never believing the teachings. You don't believe me. You don't believe the books. You don't believe anything anybody else says. You need to learn, reflect, and practice to be able to see the truth for yourself. And that's what's going to transform that. Okay. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to end class here by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for everyone online who's joining as well. This is the last class of this particular iteration of the group learning program. I teach it every 7 months. I've probably taught it 10, 12 times by now. And I'm going to be restarting it on Sunday from the very beginning. And students can learn here. They can learn online. But when I get to the end of a program like this, I usually like to just say thank you to anybody who's maybe offered some support in any way, whether you're online or here. Maybe sometimes people provide some support, like sometimes people come here and they clean the temple. We have people that come and clean the bathrooms and vacuum the floor and sweep the carpets. And, sometimes people leave a little bit of money for lights and water and other things that we need to pay for in order to support the work that we do. And I just like to say thank you to anybody who's offered any kind of contribution to be able to help us, to be able to share these teachings, because it's wonderful to be able to share these teachings with you guys. It's really the best thing you could ever do for yourself, is get to a point where you've trained your mind. It's going to help you, it's going to help those around you, and it's going to help all of humanity. So I'm always appreciative when people support us, but I never have any expectation that somebody will. So you're always welcome to learn with me at no cost, but there's never an expectation that somebody would support me, but I always appreciate it when they do. So if you guys would like to learn more, there's opportunities for you guys to do that. You can get these books, you can come to classes and courses, whether it's here or online. There's ability for you guys to be able to do all of that stuff. Just let me know if you would like to get plugged into the teachings in any way. So whatever you guys choose to do today for the rest of your day, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.